Has anyone filled out their survey? I think I totally forgot to have you do that. So I'd like you to fill out the first survey, which is actually even targeted for today. The white sheet behind the first one. Not the blue sheet. The blue sheet's the stress one. We can get to that in a little bit. The white sheet, and I would like you to go through, and so essentially it's two surveys. So the first one is the one that has the super brain, but both of them, essentially, you're going to enter the appropriate number. It's a 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, or 3, with 0 meaning the least or never, and 3 is most or always. So, for example, crave sweets during the day. This would be like if you always crave sweets, it'd be like a 3. If you never crave them, it'd be a 0. Okay, for the next one, irritable if meals are missed. It's not an uncommon thing for people. But if you never get irritable if you miss a meal, that would be a 0. Or all the way up to a 3 if you get really irritable and you're eating the table because you're frustrated or you're snapping at other people. And then depend on coffee to keep going or get started. Each of those all the way down and then up to the top of the second column is that particular survey. So if you fill those out, I appreciate it. This will just better help you understand what we're going over tonight.
What does increased thirst and appetite refer to exactly?
That one is the first and second. Oh, increased thirst and appetite. Compared to usual, are you thirstier than usual? Are you drinking
so
a lot more?
So like this time versus another time in the past?
Yeah, and compared to usual.
Okay.
Your usual. It's all relative to you. And then once you've done that, I would like you to add up all of the numbers in the first column and then the top of the second and put that total in just above the Outsmarting Dementia book cover.
You just saying count them all, or they each fall this?
Add them all up
one
together. We're doing this one, not the blue one.
Oh, sorry.
Which one are we doing?
It's okay.
This one?
I switched on you. I didn't do the stress when I did this other one.
We're doing this.
I'm doing this one?
Yeah, that one, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So you go all the way down the first column and then up to the top of the second column there. Add those numbers together and put that total in. And then you do the second column from the book down and you do those as well. Now, each of my books, I've seen other people do this in their books and I thought it was kind of clever and smart. There are surveys in different chapters that are specific to that particular element that may lead to dementia or Alzheimer's. And so I pulled one of the surveys from the Super Brain book out, and that's that first one. And then I took one out of the other book, and that's the second. So these are sort of like combined books and workbooks. Okay, did everyone get that filled in? Mm-hmm. Great. So, how many people had, for the first total that's at the top of the second column, how many people had 5 or less? Raise your hands. 5 or less, okay.
Wow. Seriously?
Really? Okay, how many people?
Uh-huh. You had 5 or did you do the top two?
And the top is the top there. Okay, how many had 10 or more? Raise your hands. Okay, so on this one, if your total is 8 or more, I suggest you get evaluated. Okay? And then, okay, now how about the next one? Okay, and the next one, how many people had in the second column, the one that's poor memory, confusion, poor concentration, poor coordination? Stuttering, stammering. How many had 5 or less? Okay, and how many had 8 or more? Raise your hands. Okay. No one's looking. So on this one, it's 7 or more. And so the first one, as you might guess, what do you think that has to do with? The first
Your gut.
survey.
Your gut.
Gut, what else?
Food.
Food, okay, what else?
Digestion in general.
Digestion. Okay, so on the sheet I handed out, It's actually the one that is right about 10 o'clock on the dial. So what would that be?
Sugar?
Sugar. All has to do with symptoms of sugar. Sugar imbalance. Now, diabetes is well known as an inflammatory condition. Diabetes is pro-inflammatory, and it's a blood sugar imbalance where the body and the cells no longer respond well to insulin. And I have had, like, my uncle was a surgeon. When I was 18, growing up in Indiana, he wanted me to be a doctor. And so that's sort of why I kind of went in this direction. And he was an excellent surgeon, general surgeon. I worked with him when I was age 18. My father had just died of lung cancer, which he had for 5 years, spitting up blood and all that kind of thing. So a week before I graduated from high school, my dad died. And my uncle had me work with him as a surgical assistant, age 18. Now this is in 1971. Back then, none of this little like micro, little cuts like, no, it's big open wounds and stuff like that. So we did like 54 surgeries. Really amazing experience for me. None were on the brain, but actually my father, in the last stages of his cancer, it was metastasized, and it metastasized the brain. And his behavior, he was always this mild person. He got really irritable and irrational and everything. It's just like this radical change in his whole behavior. And it was one of the first things that sort of made me want to learn more about the brain and why the brain operates the way it does. But anyway, so I worked with my uncle, and then my uncle, as I say, a lot of doctors don't take very good care of themselves. Has anyone heard that before? Not me. I'm perfectly taking care of myself.
But you're a holistic doctor, that's why you take care of yourself.
But my uncle did, and he had diabetes, and his last years were in a nursing home. He had one leg amputated, then he had to have another one amputated, and I would go in, I'd visit him, and sometimes he would know me, sometimes he was in a coma. And then aunts of mine also, I went to visit them in Indianapolis. Anyone been in Indianapolis?
Yeah.
You're from Indianapolis? Yeah. It's the cultural mecca of the Midwest, let me tell you. That's what some people call it. Anyway. Other people call it Indianapolis. But so I went to visit my aunt, and on my father's side, and but not related by blood. She was a in-law aunt, and she was in a nursing home. And when I went in to visit her, one day she knew me right away, all that, but she had all kinds of problems. She was in a nursing home, and she was essentially immobile and obese. And obesity is a risk factor for Alzheimer's and dementia. Because the more fat you have in the body, the smaller your brain becomes. Anyone ever heard of Kaiser? Kaiser? Yeah. Kaiser Research Foundation found that out. They discovered that relationship between obesity and the size of the brain. Very interesting.
That's interesting.
And 50% of the brain is cholesterol, by the way. You have to have cholesterol in your body. You don't want to get rid of all the cholesterol in your body because you lose half your brain. But so anyway, my aunt, and then the next day, she didn't recognize her daughters or anything. And it just back and forth, back and forth. And that's a blood sugar issue. She was diabetic. And so blood sugar is a huge factor on the brain. And part of it's because of its inflammatory nature. So dealing with blood sugar is really important while you can. So it's quite possible that, so blood sugar, stress, inflammation, meningeal compression, these are all different factors that are important. Now,